Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast. And joining me for a little Rockets chatter is Cooper Klein, host of the NBA Draft podcast Upside Swings and contributor to Rockets Chop Shop on YouTube. Always great to catch up with you, Cooper. And what a start to the Rockets season it has been. The first question right off the bat is lots of ways to go with this, but what shocked you most about the Rockets' first six games?
Well, I'll be a little bit basic, and I'll just go Dillon Brooks with everything. He was always sold as like, well, worst case scenario, he's an elite defender, that's worth $20 million a year. But his offense has been like nearly all-star worthy so far through 6 games. Obviously, small sample size, but his process has just looked so much better on the offensive end. He's playing great connected basketball. He's playing in the rhythm, moving the ball. He's driving a lot more, not settling for long contested twos. It seems like he's playing a lot more for each matchup. Like against the Kings the last 2 nights, he has been killing guys in the post. The second they get him switched onto somebody who's like 6'3" or a little bit weaker, he takes him right down into the post, gets a nice, easy, finish in there. His finishing has been great. He's been running out in transition, just has completely revamped his shot chart in a way that I didn't think possible. And even like just the jumper just looks so much better. He was working with one of the assistant coaches, I think the top assistant coach for Team Canada. His name's escaping me, but over the summer, and they were really working on the trajectory of his jumper. It's looking like it's paid dividends already. You cannot complain about anything that Dillon Brooks has done for this team. And the way he was talked about this summer, like I wouldn't sign Dillon Brooks for the minimum. What team wants Dillon Brooks? It's like, obviously I didn't think it was that extreme. He's obviously a rotation player. He's shown it year in, year out. One bad playoff run doesn't invalidate that. But he has exceeded any sane person's expectations coming into this year, even on the defensive end, right? He is one of the most insane defenders I've ever seen with my 2 eyes. He's incredible on ball. He can screen navigate really well, despite being, a bigger guy, really bulky, and his effort just never wanes. He is, anytime Jalen or Jabari or even Fred get screened out of a play or they make a little mistake, he's hustling to cover that up. He's getting into passing lanes. He's bothering guys around the rim. His digs and play around the nail, exceptional. Like everything you could ask of a wing defender, he does at an elite or borderline elite level. I didn't realize the impact that would have on this team. I'm kind of a fool for that on the defensive end, but on the offensive end, he's just proved everyone wrong. And if he can even be 70% of this the rest of the year, that deal's a steal. So I think Dillon Brooks would be my big one.
The other part about Dillon Brooks is shot selection. We heard about how bad it was in Memphis, and I made the point after they made that signing. I don't know if anybody heard me make the point, but I said, look, this is not anybody that's going to be coaching him. It's Udoka, and he put the guys with the Celtics in really good spots. And that's really my biggest surprise. But before I mention all of that, as we record Tuesday afternoon, the Rockets sit number 13 in defensive rating, Cooper, number 7 in fewest points per game in the paint, number 4 in assists to turnovers, number 8 in assist percentage. They've had 28 or more assists in 4 of 6 games. They did it only 10 of 82 times last year. Their rebounding numbers, they're not great, but that could start changing with Tari back on Wednesday. I mean, I guess that's kind of their weak point. But biggest shocker for me is how Udoka, he's put these guys in the right spot on offense, and not just Dillon Brooks, but everybody, because we already knew about Udoka's defensive chops. And it's just surprising what he's been able to do offensively in a short amount of time. The best example is 3-point percentage. Look at the numbers. And I'm going to throw up a slide. If you're listening to this, go on YouTube, check it out. But I'll throw that up so people can see it a little bit. If you told me it looked like this 6 games, just 6 games into the Udoka experience, it's just miraculous. The numbers are, and I think some of them are covered up, but just to give you an example, Dillon Brooks, 56.5% Jayshawn Tate, 53.8%. Jabari, 38.2%. Jalen, 37%. There are 7 Rockets shooting over 37%. And Cooper, that happens because of excellent shot quality and precise spacing. Those are the 2 main reasons.
Yeah, the ball movement has been such a big point of emphasis on offense. Even like Jalen is moving the ball a lot more. When he's getting doubled, he's making the right pass out of that. When he's, walled up on drives, he makes better kickouts. His passes have looked a lot better this year. Fred makes the extra pass every time. Dillon Brooks makes the extra pass every time. Sengun's passing, his quick reaction time, or his quick reaction speed passing has gotten a lot better. One of my big problems with Sengun early in his career is that he always grabbed the ball and took forever to survey the floor. And he has gotten so much better at just taking the ball, making a quick read, not clogging up the offense, making sure that the ball keeps hopping, keeps moving. And I think that's a big part of why the offense has just steadily gotten better and better as the years gone on, or the last 2 weeks. It's because everybody is committed to getting better and improving from their mistakes. And there's real veteran leadership holding these guys accountable. And it's been a real joy to watch.
Yeah. What's happened with Jayshawn Tate? I don't know who's worked with him, if that's just been the Rockets staff, but you talked about Dillon Brooks and shot form. Jayshawn Tate, we've been waiting for this. And these are 2 guys that you just don't expect in their late 20s to all of a sudden figure it out. And just to put emphasis on what you said about Dillon Brooks, NBA personal coach, he does a lot of personal coaching. David Thorpe said on his True Hoop show that he sees a definite difference in Dillon's form and what he's seeing right there. And, that's the thing. It's not one guy. It all seems to be working in unison with a bunch of different guys and a bunch of different stuff that's going on. I mean, you can't get much argument as to what they're doing shooting wise. And it feels like, well, maybe it's not sustainable, some of these numbers, but it's definitely sustainable getting these kind of quality shots.
Yeah, and even with these guys are maybe shooting outlier once you get up over 40, but if you can get about league average or just above league average shooting out of this many guys who weren't league average shooters before, we're going to continue to at least be competitive in these games. If not winning, we've been dominating the last 3 games, in part due to those really, really crazy numbers. But if those come down, we're still winning those games. We're still playing much better basketball. We're playing winning basketball finally. So even as this all tends to smooth out over the course of the year, I expect this to at least be a trend, a step in the right direction kind of thing.
Quick question for you. Alperen Sengun, you mentioned him, averaging 18.2 points, 8.5 rebounds, 7 assists. Do you think he could be an all-star as soon as this year? Is that possible?
I think he'll be in contention for it. I think the names ahead of him are just too exciting. I think if we're winning a ton of games, I think he'll get some kind of respect. It's just hard. The West is absurdly loaded in both the front court and the back court. Victor Wembanyama probably going to make an all-star team just because of his defense. I could see Chet being on that list of guys. He's averaging 18 on nearly 80% true shooting while being an elite defensive anchor. I could see Sengun being deserving of an all-star spot, and the West has 13 good teams and we don't really have room for one guy from every team that's solid. No matter how good the numbers are, especially if he's not up over 20 points per game, as much as that's unfair to him because of how well he's played and how efficient he's been, you got to have some kind of flashy, showy something to give you a little bit of an edge over the Jaren Jackson Juniors and the, Chets and Wembys and Anthony Davises and all these kinds of guys in the front court.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, I think that's going to be the problem, is the logjam, because Jokic is getting in. He's the best player in the NBA. And then as far as other guys, Anthony Davis, he's got a great reputation, but his health could play a role. So that might eliminate him. But even if that eliminates him, you talk about Wembanyama, it's not going to be that you're worried about Wembanyama maybe making it ahead of him by, the coaches and players and who, the other votes, but it's going to be a fan vote. I think Wemby's going to get in on a fan vote, over somebody like Jokic, even because, Wemby, people are going to want to see him in the All-Star game. And then you mentioned Chet Holmgren, he's had a fantastic start to his rookie year. His numbers are great. The other part about that, Cooper, is that, if it's between Sengun and Chet, it's who's got the better record. And, they should have a better record than the Rockets, you would assume, going into the All-Star game.
As good as we've been, we don't have a top 15 player, 15, 20 like they do. Shea's looked a little slow. The Giddey minutes have looked really bad for OKC. But, I mean, that team is just so talented up and down the roster. Not very many vets, a lot of one-way players. But at the end of the day, when you have such a strong top five, like especially with a top 15-ish player, it's really hard to not win games unless you get injured. And if Shea does get hurt and they continue to play these guys like Ousmane Dieng, Trey Mann, who just are not, like Poku, who are not ready to win, even Giddey right now, I could see their record going down a little bit more than we think. And maybe Sengun slipping in there, but the defensive edge for Chet, I think, is going to give him, in the minds of coaches, like, oh, he's anchoring this defense basically all on his own. He's so skilled, like a two-way, like true dominant two-way threat. And I think unless he gets hurt or that OKC team just is really, really bad, I think he's going to make the All-Star team as well. He's been so valuable for them. And it's hard to deny him that, especially as a rookie.
Yeah, the thing with Sengun is he's going to be more of the assist guy. He's going to be more setting up the offense. Whereas, Chet will have a definite advantage on defense, even though Sengun's played some really good defense, because there's just going to be the counting numbers, block shots, things like that. That's going to help him a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's unreal what we've seen from Sengun defensively so far. While we're talking about long shots, you talk about Sengun All-Star and all that. Do you believe the Rockets could compete for a play-in spot? And I just want everybody to keep in mind, they need to be above 5 teams out west, Cooper. But I ask this because I've noticed a couple early surprises. The Grizzlies, they're in serious trouble. And worth noting, the Rockets have 3 games with Memphis before Ja Morant returns. So that will help the Rockets quite a bit if they can take advantage of that. The Suns could slip if they don't get healthy fast, because we've seen, this team is not that good outside of the top 3 guys. And, they're beatable on any given night. The Spurs beat them twice in a row. So, who knows? And then you have the Jazz, Blazers, and Spurs, the other 3 teams that you would figure would struggle and potentially worse than the Rockets. Spurs maybe the big question mark there, but it doesn't seem like Pop's trying to win. So like I said, Cooper, you got to be better than 5 teams, and there's potentially 5 right there. What do you think? Is it realistic at all?
I think we'll be in the race at the very least, like until the deadline-ish, February, March. I think we'll be competing every single night, and that's going to give us a step up on the Blazers, who, DeAndre Ayton is either like unstoppable or the worst player in the game, and at any given moment. There's all these guys in teams whose effort wanes, their schemes don't really make sense, their guys are getting hurt all the time. But I think that defensive effort and, just Sengun being Sengun, you have a great offensive base of just ball movement, decent shots, good looks for the team. I could see us being like the 11-12 seed and being a few games out of the 10 spot. I could see us like eking into the 10 spot because we get lucky and we're a little healthier than everyone else. If the Pelicans get any more hurt, they could be a dropper. You never know with these teams. Lose 1 or 2 guys that are super key, and well, the West looks completely different than it did 2 weeks ago. That's just what happens when everyone's this hyper competitive. And, you could win or lose every given game on any given night. And that's especially true, when no team in the West is like super tanking. Even the Blazers have, Jeremy Grant and, all these win now-ish players like Malcolm Brogdon and, other shooters, Jabari Walker, these kinds of guys. The Spurs can beat the Suns, twice in a row. It's just such a crap fest who's going to win what game, who's looking good on what night. If the Kings can't get healthy, if they don't get Fox back, is this a competitive roster even? Is Sabonis plus a bunch of shooters who can't defend, is that a competitive roster without, your top 25 player? That's a very real question. Are they solvable? If you can put the right guys in the right spots.
You lose your number one player, and any team's going to struggle. I assume he's okay. They talked he would potentially be back for the Rocket series, so it can't be that bad.
Yeah, I just with something like that and those mega athletic guards, you never know what's going to happen, and that's just more to be like, well, you never know what's going to happen to any of these teams. Like, what if Ja comes back and it takes him another 15 games to play his way into shape? Then the Grizzlies are actually screwed, like 100% done. If they play 40 games of bad basketball, you are not making the play-in the West. It's just the reality of the situation. So I think there's a shot we can make the play-in. I think the highest we could get is 9 seed, maybe if things really break our way. But it'll also depend on, what moves are made going into the trade deadline, how healthy we're able to be. If Tari can get back, what this team looks like then. There's still a lot of stuff up in the air, but I'm really excited. Even if we don't make the play-in, if we can just compete for most of the year, this season's a huge success.
I was talking with Frank last week, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. We were talking about Jalen's ceiling, and from what we've seen so far, is he still got the capability of being, at some point we talked about, oh man, we hope he was going to be a top 10 player, all-star. I question that, especially from what I've seen from him so far. Now he's playing better last since me and Frank had that discussion, he's definitely playing better. But yeah, there's still a lot of question marks for me based on not just what I've seen from him on the court, but I wonder if he's got that dog in him to really want it that bad, as far as like, hey, give me the ball, big situations, and want to do all the little things that he's going to need to do to clean up his game. We'll see what Udoka can do, but what do you think? Can he be a all-star? Can he be a top 10 guy still?
Be a top 10 guy? I don't know if I was ever there with Jalen. I really think he could be like this top 10, alpha scorer guy. I think he can be an elite scorer. Don't get me wrong. He's one of the best shooting and finishing prospects of the last, 10 years, basically. If he's Zach LaVine, who actually plays basketball the right way, that's a top 20 player, right? And I think that's kind of what I'm seeing for him right now. As much as the shooting has kind of sucked, and obviously, he's at 53 true shooting. He had that really bad game against the Kings a few nights ago where he just could not score against anyone. And then last night he's like, well, screw it. I'm scoring this game and I am taking over. And he looked unstoppable, right? He's just weird at this point, when he decides to do what. But the one constant so far this season has been his effort on the defensive end. Obviously there's plays where he gets knocked out of the play or he loses track of his guy. But he looks like a guy who spent the last, 5 years of playing basketball where he didn't have to play real defense. Because let's face it, he didn't. If he didn't make the right rotation under Silas, which he never did, there was nothing wrong with that. He could do whatever he wanted, right? And then Ime comes in. It looks like he's learning how to play defense for the first time. And he's been pretty good, right? He's really good at executing. This is what I'm supposed to do within the scheme. I'm showing you that I can dig here. But then he does the little thing of, oh, I took my eyes off my man for half a second too long. He still hasn't figured out the timings, the rotations after the play breaks down. He hasn't figured out all the little stuff yet. But that comes with reps. That's why they're keeping him out there even when he can't score, because he's got to learn this stuff at some point. And he's picking it up really quickly. For someone who, is compared to a lot of these guys, is newer to basketball. He really committed later in his life to just playing basketball. And the G League didn't teach him how to play defensive, make defensive rotations. Silas didn't teach him how to make defensive rotations. Playing it, Prolific Prep didn't teach him how to make defensive rotations. He just looks like someone who's brand new to it, and he's trying really hard. And that's all that I can ask of him after the shit show that he's been in the last few years. The playmaking, like I talked about, with the first question, has looked better. It's still not good. He misses a lot of more advanced reads, but he is consistently still drawing, he's a gravity well. Guys are still treating him like he's an elite scoring threat because he can get to the line whenever he wants. If you don't double him, he's going to get a blow by. He has all the tools. It's just been such a shit show for the last few years that he needs to iron it out.
Yeah, one of the guys that we mentioned was Devin Booker. Like, if that's, I think we mentioned him, but that's a guy that, people say, okay, that's what you would aim for somebody like him. Okay, let's be a Devin Booker. The problem is Devin Booker was an elite shooter right off the bat. I don't know if Jalen's an elite shooter, but the space for him to get to Devin Booker is really on the defensive end. And can he do that? Because Devin Booker as a shooter was where he was, and he's added the assist. Devin Booker's now playing some point guard for that team. He's got to play point guard for them, and he's not been too bad at it. So, is that something that's realistic for him?
Devin Booker is at this point, he's like a backup point guard level playmaker where he can make basic reads, but it's basically just, I'm such a good shooter and you have to treat me like I can hit from anywhere because I can, that I can make the right read out of all this stuff. He's gotten better at the pick and roll passing, which is one of the easiest, passes to develop from. I've talked to a few guys who have talked about that before. And we've already seen Jalen, that's been his biggest area of development, is like pocket passes, hitting guys on the interior, all that kind of stuff. That's been his biggest area of growth as a passer. If he can just continue to draw two to the ball, draw the help defender, and then keep his head on a swivel, make the correct kick out, he's going to be at that Devin Booker level of passing. I don't know if he'll ever be that level of shooter, but he's so much more athletic, at least in a traditional sense, like as a run and jump guy. He doesn't have that same level of balance or, hand-eye coordination or anything, but he has different strengths that allow him to, create advantages in other ways. And I think if he can really learn to leverage those, make the easy passes, he could hit that level of Devin Booker.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, Devin Booker is a, top 10 guy, whereas Zach LaVine, because all he really is a scorer. That's not what you want from Jalen. If you want him to get to that level of, hey, can he carry you to a championship, or can he at least be maybe a number one on a championship? That would be the goal, is maybe a Devin Booker with a good cast around him.
I think Zach LaVine is a lot more talented, and that's why I am more okay with him. I think Zach LaVine's also a better skill type comp because they're both just such raw athletes coming in. But I think if you put Zach on a team that's actually capable of development and not the Bulls in early 2010s or mid 2010s Timberwolves, he's a much better player right now and closer to Devin Booker than he is to where he is right now. Right now he's like a top 40 player. I think he's closer to top 20 if he's developed by a real organization that actually cares about, hey, you need to make these defensive rotations. Hey, you need to make these passes and not just go shoot whatever the hell you want.
You're saying Jalen's top 40 now?
No. Zach LaVine. Jalen's good, but he's not there. No.
Yeah. No, I get it. Well, let me ask you, what's going on over at Upside Swings, Rocket Chop Shop? Anything new over with you guys? Just plug away a little bit.
We're in a little bit of a break with Upside Swings, with the season just starting. But I mean, both of us have a lot of work going on. I'm working for Next Up Basketball Consulting, and my friend's doing assistant coaching. So we're both a little slammed at the moment. Waiting for things to cool down a little bit during winter break to hop back into that. But Chop Shop's doing its usual, chugging right along. Frank and Space are two of the hardest working dudes I've ever met in my life. They just pump out content continuously. They're incredible. At the moment, I'm mostly just clipping games. If you want to see, I talk a lot about the Rockets defense and, some of the more fun offensive, I'm not calling out play sets or anything here, but what I see in all these games and little clips to go along with all that. That's the main thing I'm doing right now, other than, doing work, hopping on the occasional pod. So, appreciate you having me on. This was a great conversation, as always. Praying Amin can get healthy. Praying Tari looks good when he's healthy. because I think Tari plus that starting lineup is going to be dominant. Like if he comes back healthy and is hitting 34% of his threes, I may have to go back and, change my mind about all that play-in talk. We might be a playoff team. So just keep
swap the Tari in the lineup with Jock Landale, and what a difference that would make. Huh?
Yeah, get some real defense in that starting lineup. Put Jabari on the bench where he can post up to his heart's desire. I don't know. There's some fun to be had there. It's going to be some tough decision making for Ime. Do you want to go with Jabari with all the defensive mishaps he's been having, or do you want to go with Tari? A little bit less shooting, but you're getting two of the best perimeter defenders in the league with him and Dillon Brooks out there as much as you can. So I don't envy Ime and the decisions he has to make, but I'm excited to watch it all unfold.
Yeah, I don't think it's a hard decision right now, though. I think you just swap Landale's minutes with Tari's minutes, and you could probably add a little bit of Jeff Green's minutes into Tari as well, because I think this team's going to be successful when Tari is getting up there at least around 25 to 30, maybe even more minutes of and I love this. I mean, you can't complain with the starting lineup. You look at the numbers. So, keeping Tari in that roll off the bench and just causing havoc and what he did last year, I think is perfect for him.
I think the rebounding bump, because like you talked about at the beginning, that rebounding has kind of been the one thing that we've kind of been missing. And I think there's a real world where Ime looks at it and he's like, well, Tari's the cleanup guy. He helps Sengun on defense way more. He covers up on the boards when Sengun's out, in the hedge. And it gives Jabari more of a chance to be the offensive focal point. I think that could be something that we see happen. Obviously, we'll see how Tari comes back. For the moment, while he's only able to play 15, 20 minutes a game, don't need to try anything crazy. Don't need to disrupt the flow that we got going. But I think it could be something that we see if Jabari's defense doesn't improve or the shot making isn't as real as it's, he showed it to be so far.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what these guys look in the lineup. Again, thanks so much for doing this. It's always fun having you on. We'll talk to you soon, man.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.